Hey, this is Kirk from Go Make Music, and I wanted to take you inside my ambient music project called We Dream of Eden. And I'm unpacking a single that's coming out right now, actually, called Back to You. So I'm going to do a little walkthrough and show you a little bit about my process, and hopefully you glean some things that inspire you to make music. Or make anything, So let's dive in. This is the session right here. And I basically layered the sounds. I've organized them more for you to see my process. It's not usually this organized when it gets down to the end, but I figured it would make more sense. But it's still how I think about everything. So we have pads that I'm going to walk into, and then we got pianos, we got bass, we got guitars, lots of guitars. We have some ooze, some vocals, and then we got some sprinkles, which I love, and I'll tell you about those soon. And then we got some atmospheric sounds, meaning like Foley, field recordings. I think this was Spitfire's free London Atmos. So when I'm looking at building a track, it can happen lots of ways. But a lot of times I start by just creating a pad, creating some kind of, reverbed, moving, undulating background sound that kind of just moves throughout and creates this space, creates this universe. And then I like to kind of find melodies that fit and feel good and go from there. So it's kind of the order that I wrote this song, if I remember, is I started with the pad, and then I did some pianos, and then I did the bass, and then guitars. And so this is kind of the progression, at least of this track, and of a lot of my tracks, is I kind of create this sonic landscape, and then I start dabbling melodies until I have a structure, and then once I kind of have a structure, I fill it out with bass, guitars, whatever I want to. And then I kind of mix it all together. So let's dive in first to the pad. Now this is a combination of things. I got some piano noodles. Let's see what we got here. And so that's a piano with lots of reverb. Sometimes I might reverse the piano and print it and then reverse it again with more reverb and create kind of this undulating, reversing thing. And then I copy and paste it in different ways. And a lot of this time I don't even have a tempo set because I don't want it to sound repetitive. And so when I loop it, it's kind of, you can see it's not like all the same. So then I have this middle pad, which is the same kind of idea, but I think I either pitch it up or do a new set of noodles. Right? And if you notice, it's kind of moving back and forth, left and right. And that's this little trick here. I use just a basic tremolo. And I'm using this as kind of an auto pan to where it will, every 3 bars, go from one side to the next. See, now it's moving over to the other one. So what that does, so not only is the pad kind of new and different slightly, and if it's looping, it's not looping in the same points, it's also moving side to side. So that creates another part of the kind of the atmosphere. And then the same thing with this high pad. So I'm doing the tremolo, doing micro shift, which is like a chorus spreader. It's a cool plugin. Valhalla Room, love it. It's super long, 30-second decay. So that's long. And again, that's moving. Now that's moving back and forth, but it's not the same. So this, I just chose a slow rate point. No real reason to those numbers. I just want them to be different. So it's kind of like this one's moving left and right, this one's moving left and right, but they're not in sync, and so they kind of meet in different places throughout the track. With the noodles. So it kind of creates this world. I have, middle, high, kind of mid-high sounds that are just moving and changing and evolving, as opposed to just holding, a note on a synth and letting it go. To me, this is more interesting and kind of subtle, but I do that. I spend a little bit of time kind of creating this world, and then I'll start, just putting my hands on a piano or a virtual piano. And I tell you what, I have a lot of pianos. I just love this thing. I just love the soft piano from Spitfire Labs. It's free. It's great. A lot of times I will just kind of roll off some of the thumpiness if I know I'm going to be doing bass. And I might compress it. I might not. It just doesn't need a lot of compression because it's so soft. It doesn't have a wide dynamic range. So it just sounds good. So I probably just was listening to the pad and tinkering around and came up with this melody. It's the same shape, dun 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 dun, dun, and I kind of move it over, but I really liked it, and it looks like when I wrote it that I had this accompaniment on the left hand, and I wanted to wait to bring that in, but it probably sounds like this. Right? So that was the original kind of theme, the idea. And I basically wrote it and I was like, okay, I like that. And then to start it off, I decided let's get rid of the left hand and just have the melody in. And that's another thing too with kind of composing is you might come up with a more complex theme or thing, but maybe don't reveal it all at once. Maybe give them a taste of a melody and then add to it. And so this kind of became that. This was pretty much the whole piece. I think I have a B section here at the end, but it's basically that melody twice, then that melody looks like 4 times, so like twice through the whole sequence with the left hand and bass, and then a B section, then I ended back off. So it's kind of like A, B, A in the structure. So again, I create the universe, then I have a theme with a piano. Sometimes it's a piano, sometimes it's something else. And then I make a little structure, which is these melodies, then bring in the left hand, then go to a B section. Let's look at the B section. All right, so it kind of goes through that. Now that's really slow. Part of the point of ambient is that it should be this relaxing feel to it. But how do you play that slow and stay constant without overplaying? Well, what I do is I use this guy. I create a click track out of orchestral percussion. Really slow. And that's it. And I use that while I'm tracking kind of some of my basic instruments. I don't like the clip clop because it kind of makes me feel anxious, and then I start to overplay and I become too rhythmic for what I'm trying to do with this music. So, but you can hear it in the context of while I'm tracking. And you can see it's not like I'm not bang on the money with all of my piano stuff. I'm playing around it, but it's keeping me from getting way off track. Um, and so that's kind of another little, I guess, ambient music trick would be if you want something that has some form of steadiness but not be overwhelmingly rhythmic. Make yourself a nice little dark click track that's simple and play to that. But then when you're ready to be done, just mute it before you bounce it out. Um, and I do ambient tracks that have no tempo at all. They just are what they are, and that's fun too. Um, but I do like using a click sometimes. So I wanted to mention that. So I got the melody, I got the rhythm, I got the B section, I got these low piano guys down here. Right? And for this one, I didn't roll off the low end, so I have this off because I want that low end. See, I want it. So that's pretty much the piano. Now you can tell I'm doing some processing on the overall, doing a little bit of compression, a little bit of EQ, saturation, and probably bumping the lows and highs or scooping out the mids, which you don't have to do all the time. But for the main melody, I sent these guys to some Valhalla Room with a pretty long decay and some Echo Boy with a ping pong, eighth note on one side, dotted eighth on the other. And that kind of gives it. That's the other thing too I wanted to mention was if you see, so I had this click track, but I don't have the click track come in until like right here. So this whole kind of first movement of the piece is all no click. So me playing this was just playing it, letting it breathe, letting it be fast, letting it be slow, having retardandos at the end of phrases. That's how I wanted it to feel. And then basically I gave myself a pre-roll with this little click to do the rest of the recording, you know. So if you hear, and here comes my counting, 2, 3, 4, and then we're in. So that's kind of a thing, is like you don't have to be on the grid all the time or off the grid all the time. I decided to make this intro very open feeling and then kind of get into a little bit of a pulse. So, okay, so we got the pad made, we got the piano going, and then basically I started having a conversation between the piano and the bass. And this is a combination of live bass and synth bass. So let's just see what we're doing here. I'll just have the bass, piano, and pad all together. If you notice, the bass is kind of like moving in the spaces in between the piano. So it's almost like they're talking with each other, which I really like doing that with my parts. I'm trying to get better, but I do like it. So, but that's basically it over and over. And then we get into this B section and I bring in the synth. So when I do that, I got a lot of low end things happening. So I have to kind of manage that. So I have this piano doing low end hits. I got this bass, and I've essentially rolled off a lot of the lows from the bass so that it doesn't conflict with the piano and the sub bass. So this is just a sub bass I've made in Alchemy in Logic. It's fairly simple. A couple saw waves and a sine wave with a filter. And you'll hear that coming in. And then I just put an octave on top of it. And I can use my mod wheel to kind of play the bass. You can see that's what these are. That's my mod wheel adjusting the volume and the filter cutoff. And then I just put it together. So I get kind of the character of the live bass and the kind of the bigness of the synth bass together. So you just gotta be careful doing that, but it works. It's fun. So that's the bass. And nothing crazy. EQ'd out a lot of top end actually. And probably did a little bit of compression on the group. All right. So then, fun time. Almost fun time. Sprinkles are my favorite, but these guitars are super fun too. I started with these top ones, and they're just kind of coming in the world of the bass and guitar, talking to each other. Nothing crazy, just fun little descending line. And see what I do. Okay. So now I'm just taking that same descending line and I'm making it a little bit more complex by adding another note. And I'm adding a harmony. So I got these guys here and these guys. Now those are all individually tracked. I like double tracking guitars if I can. I just like the way it sounds. It sounds really big and it sounds sloppy enough to be alive. As opposed to just trying to do like a doubler. And so that's those guys. I think I printed a few of those to create these little sweeps reversed. So that's basically this guitar reversed and then added reverb. Also, if you're wondering what I use for my sound, I use this 2 notes torpedo wall of sound. I think there was like a free version that I used for a while, and then you have to buy like a $30 something to keep it. So I did. I like it. And so I ended up using that. I rolled off a lot of the high end actually for me for this song. And so that's basically what those are doing, some reversed things. And then this little guy, little part. A little delay, reverb. You know, not a lot of crazy movement, but the other guys are moving around it, so it works. What else? else? I got these guys here. This is more like a thrumming. Thrumming is a new word I learned last year, and it's my new favorite thing. Thrumming, it's like you're playing an arpeggio, but you're not really trying to be in rhythm. You're just kind of, you're thrumming. It's like strumming and finger thumbing all at the same time. And it creates these really cool textures. And so I did it twice, panned it left and right, and then had this guy up the middle. Is it like another melody? So those are the more rhythmic things of the guitar. And then I would take parts of the guitar that I liked and basically run it through a bunch of reverb and print it. And when I say print it, what I mean is like it's called bounce in place. So let's say, for example, I took this thing. Let's get rid of that. I took this guitar and I just put a load of reverb on it. Let's do this. And then I'm just going to make it super long and print it. So I'm committing the reverb to this one little snippet. So you can hit Control B and it'll say, hey, you want to do this? And you say, yes. And it prints it. And now we have a whole new sound that may or may not be nice to listen to, but let's see. There it is. So you do this with whatever you want, and then basically you can reverse it and fade it, and you kind of have this thing. Right? And so I also love doing that. That's kind of how I make my pads. It's how I make a lot of my textures. Just by grabbing little snippets and adding things to them and then printing those. Take those off though. And so that's basically what these are. And I use these as little waves throughout the intro and the end as little just waves of sound. Right? It's got noise in it, kind of gritty, but I like it, so it's cool. I don't mind the noise and the hiss, and sometimes I get rid of it, but I like it. So those are my guitars, and let's do the vocals before we do the sprinkles. And these vocals are just some ooze, but I was digging Torpedo Wall of Sound apparently that day, and so I just left it on everything. And this is basically, it's just a little bit of taking out all the mud and low end of my ooze and some Torpedo. And they are definitely not tuned. I'm not opposed to tuning vocals, but I didn't need to this time, maybe. And so they're really dark. And they just fill in that low mid. I like this. I like that. I like to sneak in vocal textures. Sometimes make them obviously vocals, and sometimes just make them like an instrument that you wouldn't know is a vocal, but it sounds cool. I really like that a lot, so I did it for this one. And now it's sprinkle time. Sprinkle time is my favorite time, because by now I kind of have a structure, I have a dynamic, I know what I want to do, and now these sprinkle times just kind of bring it into a new place. So I like the soft whirly, free soft whirly, super soft whirly. Not just the soft whirly, but the super soft whirly, the DI version. I like it. And I just play maybe pentatonic sounds, not in rhythm, but in key. Um, and I do a couple passes. This sounds like mostly fifths of the key. I have one in the middle, one on the left, one on the right. And I just love it. I just love the way it feels. I think of like wind chimes, you know. Right? And I'm bringing in some more sprinkles. Those might have been actually the same ones that I just kind of I copy and paste. And again, I try to make sure things aren't lined up so you don't even notice, you won't hear any patterns. I want it to sound all new. Those are those guys. And then here's my piano chimes. This is a cool thing too. I basically played something similar to what you heard in the soft whirly, but then I sample it and I put it on a keyboard. I think in this case I used just sampler, you know, and so it's an actual. See if you can see if I hit a note. It's just me playing that sequence, but then, you know, and so I have to kind of think about which key I'm playing, but you can. It creates again this randomly played right notes. and those are the 3 octaves. And then I just have that go into a reverb, you know? So I have the whirly sprinkles, and then the piano chimes, and then Oliver Arnold's chamber grid. It's so good. It just is lovely. And so I have some of those going on. I love the texture of the strings. I think I'm just adding. Again, I double track these, no quantizing. A lot of these samples are round robin. So they're actually new samples. So they are going to sound wider. You don't have to do that all the time. Just a beautiful little tension of the build. You know, it's kind of all coming together. And then what do we got at this end? This is probably the same. Yeah, this is these same whirly, but I bounced them in place and then I pitched them down. And I probably, let's see if I reversed. No. I just pitched them down an octave for the end so they wouldn't be as twinkly. And that's pretty much it for the music side of things. And then I use this Atmos, so the London Atmos from Spitfire. And I love it because it's got this knob so I can kind of use my my mod wheel to kind of bring in the volume. And once I get something I like, I just print it. So this is basically, like I said, a bounced in place version of that Atmos. It's just stuff like this, kind of white noisy, little clicks and clacks. If I take it away, it's still nice. It just adds a texture that can be really nice. And that's basically it. Another big thing that I'll show you is I did some volume automation on this pad because I don't want the pad to just be this thing that just is there. Like, I like that it's moving around here, and then I'm moving the volume of it to kind of play the pad as a performance. And I think that can add a lot of emotion to a piece like this. But that's basically it. I really enjoy doing this. It's super fun. This is my process for this song and for a lot of my songs. Let me know if you thought this was helpful or inspiring, or disagree with everything I do, or I don't know. Thank you for hanging out, for watching the process. Again, shout out to Mellotron Records for helping get this song out into the world. You can stream it everywhere. There'll be a link in the description. Share it with your friends if they're into this kind of stuff, and have an amazing rest of your day.